Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, just depending upon where you are and when you're watching. This is Marcie Thomas, founder of Brown Girl Collective and Live Well Sister, which is a wonderful space where we come together with women who are all about living our best lives in a variety of forms. And tonight's guest is no different, but she has a very specific way in which she is living her best life and is looking to help other women who may be trying to branch out into a particular genre of work that we're going to get into to help them be able to do that in the best way possible as well. So I am coming to you from the outskirts of Atlanta, Georgia. So as you're joining, if you don't mind, dropping in the comments to let us know if it's your first time here, where you're joining us from, just anything that allows this to be a more interactive experience. And of course, you will be able to ask lots and lots of questions along the way. So tonight, I am really excited about our guest because I have been a long-term cookbook collector and lover of really, really good food. And with that in mind, for the first time ever, I'm actually drinking wine while I'm doing this show. So if I get a little silly, y'all, just bear with me. And in honor of the book, it's called For the Culture. I am actually drinking a Black-owned wine, which is Chaos Theory by Brown Estates. So just to let you know, y'all check that out if you get a chance. But tonight's guest is Klancy Miller, who is the founder of For the Culture, a magazine celebrating Black women and femmes in food and wine, and the author of Cooking Solo. Klancy earned a Diplôme de Pâtisserie, I might not have said that right, but I tried, from Le Cordon Bleu Paris, apprenticed in the pastry kitchen at the Michelin-starred Talvent, and then joined Le Cordon Bleu's recipe development team. She's currently based in Brooklyn and continues to write about food and has contributed to the New York Times, the Washington Post, Food and Wine, Vogue, Bon Appetit, Cherry Bomb, and Food 52. She has appeared on the Today Show and in the Wall Street Journal, The Cut, and the New York Times food section, and much, much more. So without further delay, I'm going to bring her on and we're going to get into this beautiful book, For the Culture. So without any further delay, welcome, Klancy Miller.
Thank you so much, Marcie. Thank you for having me.
Oh, yes. As I said, it was indeed a pleasure for me because, as I mentioned, your first book, Cooking Solo, I was familiar with it. And as a person who loves to cook and loves to collect cookbooks, I just knew I had to grab a hold of this book. But it's so much more, which we're going to get into.
Yes.
Yes. So congratulations again on all of the work that you're doing. So tell us a little bit about what it was that drew you to even want to be in the space of food and beverage and all things culinary.
So I grew up in a family that loves going to restaurants, and I grew up eating very well. My mom was a great cook. My dad is a pretty good cook. And so, yeah, I grew up thinking, especially as a teenager, like maybe I'll own a restaurant someday because I liked going out to eat so much. And there was one restaurant we went to in particular in Philadelphia called Zanzibar Blue that was Black owned by the Bynum brothers. And it was this beautiful restaurant that kind of had a mixture of like Southern influenced French cuisine, I would say. And I loved it. And so that was something that entered my head at an early age. And then in college, I had a food job in my first semester as a first year. I worked in a cafeteria for a work study job. Long story short, or longer, when I graduated from college, I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. Was a history major. I had studied languages and poli-sci, and so I worked in international development briefly, but I was taking classes on the side to figure out what am I really passionate about. Like, I took filmmaking classes and editing classes and acting classes, and I took cooking classes. And the cooking classes stuck. I was just like, oh, I really like this. I love making things with my hands. And I got an apprenticeship at a restaurant in Philadelphia called Fork. And that was really fun for me. I really liked working in a kitchen, working in as a part of a team and making things and having that immediate gratification of seeing the fruit of your labor immediately,
Right.
which is what you get when you're dealing with food, especially when you're cooking it or baking it. And so I asked my chef, if she thought I should go to culinary school. And she said, you don't have to be a chef, but maybe if you're interested in pastry. And so that was a light bulb moment because I wanted to go to school again. Like, I wanted to go back to school. And I thought, oh, what if I went to culinary school for pastry in Paris? Because
Wow.
I'm a Francophile, and I thought I'd been to Paris, and I was like, I'd like to go back. So that was the start of my journey into food.
I love it. I love it. Just the fact it was something that we all eat.
Mm-hmm.
But it was in your life in a special way, having family members that cooked well, and being able to experience nice, black owned restaurants that were sound like it was a really nice place to be, so I love that. But because this is a field that oftentimes, even though black women have been cooking forever, even though we know if we go way back, into when we were first brought to this country, we were growing the food, we were cooking the food, we were doing all of these different things. Yet when you look at a food and beverage industry, we are not always at the forefront. So just in your own experience, did you find it challenging as a black woman to break into the field, or were you blessed to have pleasant experiences, or a combination of both?
I feel like I had a lot of good experiences. And I was constantly making an effort to meet people and kind of develop connections or contacts with people who I admired. Um, at a certain point, I realized working in a professional kitchen wasn't for me, and I wanted to shift into writing about food. And I interviewed the chef Marcus Samuelson, and he was really great. Like, I wrote about him, and he was great in terms of introducing me to people. And I like each person. This was after culinary school and after I lived in Paris for 4 years. Each person who I met would kind of connect me with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was very helpful for me. But I can say that along the way, especially in the very beginning, I didn't have that many black women role models. I had
Mm-hmm.
B. Smith as a role model,
Right.
who, like, my mom loved her. She was really excited about her magazine, and I knew B. Smith's TV show. And when I graduated from college, we celebrated at B. Smith's restaurant in New York when it was still open. And B. Smith was kind of it for me,
Right.
like, in terms of, she was it because she really was the template for doing it all, but also like, I didn't know of anybody else. And then years later, I learned about Edna Lewis, and I learned about others, and I had the great privilege and honor to interview Leah Chase
Oh, wow.
3 times, which was great. But yeah, I didn't have that many black women role models. I can't say that I feel like that held me back, but I do feel like it would have been great to have known about more Black women earlier when I was just starting out, just to know of all the legacy that we have and all the different options.
Right, because we're going to talk about that, but there are so many different things. Even as I was reading the book, I'm like, wow, yeah, you can be a chef, you can be an Instagram cook, you can, maybe get into wine, but there are so many other ways that you can be involved in the food and beverage and hospitality industry, because you also have someone in the book that is owns a hotel. So yes, it's all about that hospitality and things like that. So with that being said, what was it that made you decide to create such a beautiful book? And when I say beautiful, everyone, I mean beautiful. There are like just lovely illustrations and interviews and recipes. I mean, I shared with one of my artist friends earlier. That's one of my favorite photos that's in there. Our pictures is in there. But it's just such a beautiful book. So what was it that made you decide to put For the Culture together?
Well, I had been approached, this was probably in 2017. I was approached by a publication about doing one issue that was focused solely on Black women in food.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was a cool idea. And I started reaching out to different people to see if they would be interested either in being interviewed or contributing. And ultimately, that project didn't go forward, but I really enjoyed the process of meeting a lot of people and kind of getting people excited about this idea. So a friend of mine said, you should just do this yourself.
Right.
Don't wait on this publication, do it yourself. And so I first started a fundraiser or a crowdfunder in 2019 to raise money to print the first issue of For the Culture, a magazine celebrating Black women and femmes in food and wine. And that did really well. And the idea was for it to be a magazine focused on Black women and femmes in food, wine, and hospitality, but also written by Black women, photographed by Black women, illustrations by Black women, everything through the gaze of Black women. Because I feel like so often our stories aren't centered and our perspectives aren't centered. So I just wanted to center us in every way possible, visually, through the page, on the writing. And that was really great. And then what had happened was the summer of 2020 was an intense summer. George Floyd was murdered. Black people got popular for about 6 weeks. And my publisher from Cooking Solo reached out to me and they said, we'd like to do another book with you. And they had an idea in mind and I didn't like their idea. So I said, hey, I'm working on this magazine. What if I kind of did a book inspired by that and focused on Black women and Black femmes in food? And they went for it. So that's ultimately how the book came about.
Yes, and as I shared some of the drawings, but of course there are recipes, so there are pictures and food and stuff like that in here as well. But what I love about the book is the combination, because one of the taglines it says interviews, inspiration, and recipes. So in that creative process, were there people that you already kind of knew, or people that were suggested to you, or just the network would tell you about this one? Oh, you should talk to this one here or this person there. How did you kind of compile the women? And I'll be honest, I did not count how many women are featured in the book, and how did you come about bringing those women together for the book?
So there's 66 women who I interviewed, 66 Black women and femmes. Many of the women I interviewed, I already knew. Some people I didn't know. Some people I've admired from a distance for many years. Following on Instagram or just, like Carla Hall, for example. I've loved her ever since I saw her on Top Chef, just big time fan from the beginning. Excuse me, I have a cold. But then there are also people who, whose pop-ups I've been going to, like Kia Damone, Anya Peters. They're people who I am in closer proximity with and also admire. So I wanted to have the book kind of be reflective of the diaspora. I wanted to have it be reflective of our vastness and our vast expertise and experience. I wanted to have women of different ages and different generations and, on different continents. There are people on the continent of Africa, there are people based in Europe, there are people based in the States, there are people in the Caribbean. So I wanted it to really be vast. So some people I could reach out to as a friend, and some people I had to ask mutual friends, like, hey, can you introduce me to so and so? You know what I mean? And that's how it came out.
Yes, and as you know, I've already said it's just beautifully put together. And there are a couple of people in here I've actually been to their places because I used to live in the Savannah, Georgia area. So I have been to Cheryl Day's Bakery. She's
Yay.
in here. And I have been to Mashama Bailey's restaurant when I lived in Savannah.
Wonderful.
So those were two. I'm like, okay, I've actually been there. So that was pretty exciting to see them in the book. But what I also really love is that you start out with the foremothers, some of the women whose shoulders that you stand on, you and other women that are in the industry stand on, like Edna Lewis and B. Smith, who you've already mentioned, Leah Chase, Verda Mae Smart, Grosvenor, and one that I wasn't familiar with, which I'd love for you to talk about, Lena Richards, because I did not know about Lena Richards. So tell us a little bit about her.
So Lena Richard, holy smoke, she's really fascinating to me because I learned about her later than I learned about any of the other people. I learned about her from Dr. Jessica B. Harris in a talk she gave in Brooklyn in 2017. And she said, do you know there was a Black woman who had her own cooking show um, a decade before Julia Child? Like, do you know that? And I didn't. And I really was upset that I didn't know that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so her story is phenomenal because she started out as a domestic cook for a white family in New Orleans. She did a great job and they sent her to culinary school. She was already excellent, but then they sent her to a culinary program so she could gain more skills. She ended up opening her own culinary school for newly married women to be able to cook for their husbands and families. She also opened up a culinary program for domestic cooks so that they could expand their repertoire and charge more money.
Mm-hmm.
She had a cookbook. She had a line of frozen foods. She had a restaurant. She had her own TV show. This is all in Jim Crow South in Louisiana. And I just find, and she was an itinerant chef. She would go and cook in different restaurants in the country. And the fact that she had this empire, she had something that people strive for now, you know what I
Right.
mean? In terms of cookbook, TV show, restaurant, line of foods. Like she had an aspiration, she had a blueprint. She was
Right.
doing it. And as a Black woman in the Jim Crow South, it's just like, what? This is an amazing story. It's so incredibly inspiring. So when Dr. Jessica B. Harris talked about her, and when I read more about her, there's a great journalist for the USA Today. I'm blanking on his name. It might be Chris Todd. He wrote a great article, like this huge, massive article on Lena Richards in, I think, like 2 or 3 years ago in USA Today. And that was just mind blowing. So I just felt like, everybody talks about Julia Child. We've all heard of her. No disrespect on her. She
Right.
had a life or had a cool life. It has been inspirational for a reason. But I feel like if you know about her, you should also know about Lena Richards' story.
Right. And that's why, when I saw this, oh my goodness, because as I said, the other ladies I was kind of familiar with, but
Uh-huh.
I had never heard of her. And I'm like, how do I know this? But it's one of those things that, stories get hidden. And oftentimes if you don't have a direct connection, or it isn't that person who's like doing really deep dives into study and history and, research and stuff like that, there are so many people that you're not going to know about. Yes, we just got a comment like, wow, that is fascinating. That's why I had
Right?
to bring that up.
Yeah. Amazing. Like, to have one or two of those things is great. You know what I mean? To be a cook
Mhm.
author, to have a culinary school, but food line, restaurant, doing pop-ups before the term came up, TV show. It's incredible.
Yes. Yes. And those stories are so important because, as the more that we learn, the more that we know, it helps us to dream bigger, and to realize that there's so much more out there that's available to us. And what I love in the book is that as you are talking to the different women and interviewing them, that you ask like a series of questions, and I love that aspect as well because it's about food, it's about their journey and things like that, but it's also about, what about, the business side of things, what about the money? How about making sure you're getting paid? Because, people always want to underpay us. How are you taking care of yourself?
Yeah.
So I love that it's a well-rounded view of who, those 66 women are. And you're included in there as well. Your
Yeah.
story is so, but I love that it's well-rounded, that it's not just this is how you make it, this is how you get put on, this is how you get people to know you, but it's also about how are you taking care of yourself and how are you making sure that you are, living well, as the name of the show is called.
Yes, absolutely. I feel like that's important to share because we're all multidimensional human beings. We don't just work. We also have, our emotional lives, our personal lives, our all the different facets of our lives. So while I wasn't trying to do a deep dive into everybody's
Right,
life, but just how do you take care of yourself,
right.
especially in the hospitality industry, which can be really hard on people's
Yes.
health.
Yes. And fun fact, I actually worked, well, my first job was working at McDonald's a million years
Cool.
ago. But I was in the Air Force for several years, and my first job out of the Air Force, I was a manager at Pizza Hut.
Wow.
I sure was. So I know I'm trying to find some pictures of the food so I can show people. But I know all about the long days, the long nights. People don't show up. You got to do everything. You got to wash the dishes. You got to prep the food. Yeah. So I know all about that aspect of it for the short term that I did it. So, but like, here's one of the recipes.
Oh yeah, the fonio, yeah,
Yeah,
jollof.
the palm on Fonio Jola. So yeah, so as I mentioned, it's not just the stories about the women. It's also recipes as well. The best way to order the book, well, of course, it's available on all platforms and
Yes.
bookstores as well. And since you brought that up, there actually is a Brown Girl Collective bookstore, which is tied to Bookshop. So I've put that up if you want to go there. The book is listed there since Klancy is one of the featured guests. So if you go there as well, you can find the book. And of course, that helps us out a little bit and helps me to be able to continue to do the work that I am doing. So if you don't mind, I would love that. But the main thing is that you get a copy of the book. So, but yes, so just as we are the different type of women, you have women who are restaurant owners.
Yes. There are women who are restaurant owners. There are pastry chefs. There are bakers. There are pop-up chefs. There are bartenders. There's a woman who owns a hotel in Morocco.
Mhm.
Um, there are food writers and journalists, they're food television personalities, they're artists, like artists who use food as their main medium. They're food and cultural preservationists, farmers, gardeners, food historians. It really covers a lot of bases. Uh, And I should give a shout out to the art director of the book is George McCalman, who made it
Okay.
look beautiful. And the photographer is Kelly Marshall. She took photos of all the
Mm-hmm.
for the recipes and the beautiful illustrations. There's a portrait for everybody who's interviewed. The
Mm-hmm.
gorgeous portrait are by Sarah Madden.
Yes, because as I mentioned, I shared it with my friend earlier. She's like, "Who did those illustrations?" So I had to tell her because it is just so beautifully done. Oh, and we have yes, interesting variety. It definitely is. And then one of the people watching, their son is a hospitality major,
Wonderful.
BSU undergrad and grad school Cornell. Okay, okay. Good. Oh yeah, here's another recipe. Here that is pasta di San Lorenzo, which is a tuna pasta. I definitely will probably try that because I love tuna and I love pasta. So
Yes.
that'll be good. So what as you mentioned, there are a whole lot of different things across the genre or across the industry that are covered. And for me, it was just really exciting to see that because it helps us to understand that there's not one path. And just like you had a certain path in reading the profiles of the different women or their interviews, each woman had a different path. There were some who knew from childhood that this is what they were going to do. And then there were others that, kind of fell into it after doing different things.
Absolutely. I wanted to, and I mentioned this in the introduction, I wanted to create a resource that I wish I would have had when I was just starting out as like a young 21-year-old. Like what are the various paths that are available? And even if you are in one area, what does one person's path look like? Like there are people in the book who started off in a kitchen and ended up writing about food, or started off in a kitchen and ended up as artists, you know, or television personalities, or entrepreneurs. There are people in the book who, the woman in Morocco started off as a lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
like she's a lawyer and she's helping her parents buy a second home in Morocco.
Mm-hmm.
And she had also studied architecture. That was part of her academic
Mm-hmm.
background, but she was a person practicing law. And
Right.
so fun for her to find this property for her parents, and as a person also exposed to the study of architecture, put that together for them, and then she ends up owning a hotel. So I wish I would have known that people's paths aren't necessarily straight lines.
Right.
And not only that, but you have so many options. And also, you have so many options at different stages of your life and different stages of your career. So I feel like the women in this book sharing their stories really illustrate that, a lot of times the line isn't straight. And
Right.
also, there are so many possibilities at more than one juncture in one's life, in this world of food.
Right, and there are a lot of women who follow a similar path to Lena Richard, that they are doing multiple things. That they are, they may be cooking, or they may be in a space where they're developing recipes, or they may be, a food stylist, or they may be, a blogger or whatever. Just so many different things that they're doing. So I love that because oftentimes, and last week we had someone on, we were talking about money, and finances, and being able to have multiple streams of income.
Yeah.
And sometimes that is just so important, all the time, I would say. But, to be able to see these women take a skill set and be able to parlay them into a lot of different avenues, I found that very powerful.
I totally agree. And also, like, uh, I think that is actually a through line in the book. Like, pretty much everyone is doing more than one thing. and oftentimes more than two or three things. Yeah.
Right, and that kind of answers the question we had that did you find any common denominators with the women in their interviews? That would be one.
Yeah, that's definitely one. Just like being very nimble, very creative, very talented,
Yes.
very expansive, able to do many things kind of
Mm-hmm.
at once. That's those are definitely themes. And then also something that I found very affirming too, a lot of the women I spoke with talked about wanting to create lives that reinforce their well-being,
Yes.
first, and hold their mental health intact and hold, lives that make space for joy and rest and appreciating abundance. And I really loved that that was or is what so many people in the book are keeping in mind. Like, how can I enjoy my life? How can I work, but also not run myself, you know, dry, so to speak, working. Yeah, so kind of an intentionality
Mm-hmm.
approaching work in a way that can be supportive and not something that depletes you.
Yes, and that is so important, really, because, and that was the part that for me in reading, the different and the different interviews, and when you got to the part about what do you do for your mental health, what do you do for your self-care, I found that, like, you know what, even though this is a particular, industry, it applies across the board. Many of the lessons apply across the board, whether you're in the food industry or doing something else, because being able to make space for yourself, being able to make space to find joy, being able to have rest,
Absolutely.
being able to pivot or expand upon something that you already have,
Mhm.
all of that is definitely, it doesn't matter what field you're in, those are things that are universal. So I love that.
Absolutely. And you're right, it can be applied to your life regardless of what area you work in.
Absolutely, absolutely. So one of the things that I also loved, as we already mentioned, some of the different fields, I like the fact that you have women in the book that are in the science field, that they are doing the things behind the scenes, like food scientists, or one of the ladies, she works for for a spirits organization and helps developing. I'll let you tell it, but I just wanted to bring that up because I think that's exciting as well. It's not necessarily in the kitchen or on Facebook or on IG, doing things like that. It's those behind the scenes things as well.
Totally. So Joyce Spence is the master blender for Apple State Rum, which is a an incredible rum company based in Jamaica. And she, I believe, was the first woman mixer, not just the first Black woman mixer, but I think she was the first woman master blender. And that means that she is on a chemical level assuring that all of the lines of rum meet a certain standard. And so that means the taste is consistent. That means chemically it is consistent so that you have a consistent product. And she comes from a chemistry background,
Mhm.
she is a scientist. And she explained that she was considering in her education becoming a doctor, but realized she had a fear of blood. Realized, okay, better take this love of science to an area that won't involve uh,
Right. Mhm.
blood. And so, as a chemist, her skills, her expertise is of great use for a company making rum. And I just think her story's so cool. And she's ensuring that all of this rum is amazing, that it's all consistent, um, batch by batch, year by year. That's really, and that's something I never even knew existed you know,
Right.
or it's something you could take for granted. You might drink stuff, but not
Right.
understand. Oh, especially for spirits, because for wine, I think we have some basic understanding that, oh, it comes from a grape and, it is smashed and fermented and da da da. But for spirits, I never even knew that role existed. So it was really cool to hear her talk about it.
Yes. Yes. And I found that just very interesting. Also, just the fact that food science is a path for those who might be so inclined to do that, in terms of their skill set or their ability, that is an option that's available. And I love the idea of being able to create something new, or to be able to, like I said, make sure all the wine or the spirits takes the way that they're supposed to. And of course, there are women who are also like sommeliers that you have in there as well, who are involved in the wine industry more specifically, and or writing about it, because there are a lot of journalists in the book as well, whether it's food or wine. You have a lot of women who are in the journalistic space.
Yes. Yeah. I wanted to show that, you can be hands on, whether it's with food or with spirits or wine, but you can also kind of globally be a person who's taking it all in and writing about it. And so
Mhm.
the like represent the media people too.
Yeah, I think that's important. So, because there's so many different ways. I also like the fact that you included a tea sommelier, because people might not think about it for tea. And I'm drinking the wine today, but I had some tea earlier. I love tea. I will choose tea over coffee most days. But
Same.
I like the fact that you have someone in there that also specializes in teas, because tea is a lot deeper than what we think if you grab a Lipton tea bag.
Exactly. Yeah, I love tea too. And like you, I am more likely to drink tea than coffee. Also, coffee keeps me up for exactly 2 days. It messes up my stomach. It does all these things.
Wow.
I very rarely drink like real coffee, but I love tea. And I don't know, I kind of wanted to have something for everybody. And
Mhm.
I met Georgia, I think at a tea event, and I just found it really cool that she's a tea sommelier. And talking to her was so educational, because she talks about all the things that are reflected in the history of tea. It tells you about larger histories, and it tells you a larger story. And so I found that really interesting. I found it fascinating that a tea sommelier even exists, and like
Mhm.
that it is both simple and complex.
Yes, yes, because I love a good tea. And I know nowadays there are a lot of companies, Black owned and otherwise, that are springing up that are creating teas, going and drying their own fruit and flowers and,
Yes,
herbs and all of that to create tea. So it doesn't necessarily always have to be what you would normally get in a grocery store, which is what she kind of talked about, growing up. Because I believe she was from Jamaica as well,
yeah,
growing up and talking about tea and drinking tea, and it's one thing, but then also the medicinal properties that can be found in teas, especially those that you might be creating on your own.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, it's a really rich subject.
Hmm. Along that line, though, you also have talking about creating your own thing, or you have people in the book that are in the farming space that are
Yeah,
actually owning the land and growing the food and all of that.
yeah, Leah Penniman of Soulfire Farm, who I think is such an inspirational person, and whose farm is really inspiring. Like they're using Native American means of growing, like traditions of stewarding the land. And I like that she refers to it as stewarding the land. Um, and I just think she does such a great job of, demonstrating the power in farming, but also um, talking about the honest realities of being a farmer and what goes into that, and the toll it can take on one's mental health, and how you have to kind of, it does require care care of the land and care of oneself. But her story is incredible. And her soup jumu, the Haitian soup, is delicious. Such a great recipe. One of my favorites.
All right, well, everybody, you heard it here. So please pick up a copy of For the Culture, for the stories, as well as for the recipes, because there is good stuff in here. But I do think it was important to include that, because when we think about food, oftentimes, there are Black people who have a certain level of privilege to be able to go into a grocery store and pick up whatever they want, Whole Foods or whatever, or choose a vegan lifestyle, which some believe is more expensive or whatever. But then you also have people who live in certain areas where maybe, like in New York or whatever, it might just be a bodega, or it might just be the little, getting food from the gas station or whatever, where there aren't as many options. So I do think it's important that you included people in the book who are also doing some of that advocacy type work as well.
Yes, absolutely. There are a lot of people involved in food justice in the book. And yeah, addressing the issue of food deserts, addressing cultural appropriation, addressing food scarcity. That I feel like honestly everybody in the book is a leader in that, but many, many people are actively engaged in that in the book.
There was one, and I'm probably going to get the name wrong, so I'll just kind of give you a little bit and you'll tell me who it is. There was a lady in the book, I want to say, was she in the DC area, that during the pandemic and George Floyd, it was something with baking.
That would be Paola. She did Bakers Against Racism. Yes, she's great. On Instagram, she's Small Orchids. I think she's also Small Orchids on Twitter. She's fantastic. She's an amazing baker. And yeah, she created this tool during the summer of 2020 for people to fundraise to support organizations that support social justice. And it's basically like an ongoing bake sale in which people do their own baking and then, have their own bake sales and then give to organizations that are doing good in the community in numerous ways. And that's been going strong for 3 years. It's amazing.
Yeah, that is powerful. So, sometimes food isn't just food. I mean, there's so much, because one of the things, and this comes up a lot in the book as well, that, there is a sense of community around food. I mean, yes, we have to eat to live, we need basic sustenance to be able to survive, but then just the whole community aspect of food. And that's one way where you can take that community aspect to a whole nother level, not just the fact of us coming together to enjoy a good meal, but to be able to take it to a different level.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm in awe of the fact that she created that, and it's literally got a national and maybe even international presence, but definitely national presence. Yeah.
I do love that you also included women who are not just American citizens in the book. As you mentioned earlier, we have the young lady who's in Morocco who owns the hotel. Then we have some cooks that are, in the Caribbean. We have people on the motherland. Even though it's still a part of the U.S., we have somebody in Alaska. And we don't always think about Alaska's kind of out there by itself, and we don't always think about Alaska, or even the fact that there are Black people in Alaska who may be doing great things. So how important was it for you to make sure that the book had an international, and really to cover the diaspora in that way?
Well, I think of Black women as culture makers, we make culture, period, whether it's through music, whether it's through food, whether it's through, theatrical work on the stage, TV, film, dance. We make culture. And it's not only Black women in the US, it's Black women throughout the diaspora, Black women on the continent, in the Caribbean, Black women based in Europe. So, and of course, also Black women based in the States. So I wanted to have Black women in the States. And I also absolutely wanted to have women from different countries in Africa, different countries in the Caribbean. And a lot of the people I admire are also based in Europe. You know, they're Black, but based in Europe, or they're Black and born in Europe or moved there. So I just wanted to have uh, a group of people that shows like the vastness of the diaspora and the fact that we're everywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
We are definitely everywhere. And I love that because it gives us the opportunity to see what's happening in those spaces. And then something that's also mentioned by one of the people you interview, we can also have an opportunity to see how there are some similarities even in our cuisines, because rice is the center of a lot of dishes, for example, or maybe sweet potatoes, or, just certain things, or okra, certain things that are just a part of the culture.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of overlap, a lot of overlap.
Mm-hmm. And now in the book, many people did get a chance to, and I just had one of those moments in the brain where you forget. High on the Hog, there it is.
Yeah.
Yes, you also interviewed the women who produced that and put that High on the Hog documentary together, which I'm praying that there is a part two. I hope
There.
so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So that was something that introduced a lot of things about food and culture, and how it shows up in different spaces and all of that to a lot of people who may not have been familiar.
Yes. So I, of course, wanted to interview Dr. Jessica B. Harris, who wrote Eye on the Hog, because she's a very important person in food. And I think so many people look up to her and rely on her work, her body of work. And I also wanted to, and frankly, this was kind of for the filmmaker in me, because when I was a teenager, I wanted to be a filmmaker and
Mhm.
make TV and films. And so I thought not only should I be interviewing Dr. Harris, of course, but also Fabienne Tobach and Karis Jagger, who produced High on the Hog, because even though technically as film producers, you're not necessarily working in food, I think it's pretty cool that they did this project that is about Black people in food, in our journey, and that you can be in that discipline and also create work that is about food.
Yes, yes. And I love that. And I wanted to bring them up just, to kind of take it all the way around, just the fact that it's about the story and being able to tell the stories. And there are so many different ways to tell the stories, in beautiful books like yours and documentaries like what they produced. I think it's important because by hearing these stories and having this understanding, it does open the mind. It opens up opportunities, just so many different things that allow people to say, hey, I can, maybe do something, or there's nothing wrong with me, wanting to cook. Some people might be like, why do you want to cook? Cooking is basic, but no, not really.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
so many things you can do with cooking.
There's such a beautiful legacy, and we all have some stake in that. You know what I mean?
Well, we're almost at time, so I do have a few more questions that I just want to ask, just to kind of bring it back full circle to starting with you, to
Okay.
going with you. So, of course, we heard some about your journey and your work, and my question to you is, when it comes to self-care, what is it that you focus on for self-care in all of the work that you're doing?
Well, recently, I've been on book tour for the culture, and my number one thing has been rest, like giving myself permission to take a nap, to sleep a little later than I might normally sleep, like just to allow myself to get as much sleep as I need. In getting over this cold, I'm gonna get some more.
Yes.
So sleep, Therapy is really important to me. Um, Dance. I love to dance. Whether it's taking a dance class or just dancing around my apartment. Uh, I like things like massage, acupuncture, uh, that just like care of the physical self. I love spa
Mhm.
time. Those are some of my favorites. And just hanging out with people I love,
Mhm.
quality
Mhm.
time with my loved ones. That's
That's
important.
so important. Yes, yes. To be able to have that balance because, the thing of it is all of these women, yourself, myself, we all have dreams, desires, goals, aspirations, all of these things. We want to leave legacy, all of those things. But, being able to care for ourselves and make sure that we're getting what we need is so important. And when we can do that in community, that's even better. So I love that you said that. Now, if there was someone who is watching this, either live or watches later, is there any piece of advice or something that maybe you gleaned from the people that you interviewed that you would want to make sure people knew in terms of pursuing their own passion?
Well, first of all, I think it's really my number one piece of advice in terms of pursuing your passions is sometimes that sounds really big, like I know for me, when I got out of college, I was kind of trying to figure out, well, what is my passion? I know what I'm interested in. So I think sometimes my advice is follow your curiosity. What
Mm,
what is something that you always find yourself turning to? What is something that always grabs your attention? Follow your curiosity and have so much patience. Nobody wants to hear that, but I think you have to be patient with yourself and understand that uh so much in life takes time, you know, so much. And that's not, I mean, that's developing a career, that's so much in life takes time. So following your curiosity and understanding that maybe some things will take longer than you thought,
mhm.
but just, yeah, seeing things through, following your curiosity, and also realizing when you're no longer curious about something.
Right.
That's also allowed. You're allowed to be curious and then realize, oh, this actually isn't as interesting as it once was to me. Give yourself permission to change.
I love that. And even in the book, there are women who did that. They might have been doing a certain thing and realized it didn't work for them anymore, and that's
Yeah,
okay. You know.
exactly. I at one of the earlier talks, the week the book came out, I said to the person I was speaking with, there are women in the book who in 2020 were doing something and they've now changed course. And that's
Mhm,
great, and that's life. We change
mhm,
courses. We decide to take a different path. And that's, I think, something that's beautiful, and we should always give ourselves permission to do that.
mhm. Absolutely. So this is something else that you asked the women in the book. What is your mission or motto?
Um
And it can be what's in the book, or it could be something different because things evolve.
Yeah, well, I think my mission is, or not my mission, my motto is a phrase my dad gave me. It involves like salty language, but is it okay to say it?
Oh yeah, I remember what it is now. You can
I'll
say
say
it.
the non-salty part, F it, which is
Right.
an F it in my mind can go in two ways. It can mean why not? Just try it,
Mhm,
take that risk. It can also mean let it go. So
mhm,
those are my interpretations of that
mhm,
phrase, which I've unsalted, unsaltified. But yeah, I am a big believer. I think part of following your curiosity means that you're taking risks. And
mhm,
in order to take risks, sometimes you have to say, F it, I'm going to do
mhm,
this. And then
mhm,
also, I think oftentimes in life, there are things you have to let go of, or things you have to kind of shut the door on, because it's not working. So you
Right,
also, my interpretation is say F it. I'm letting that go, you know?
right,
So
right.
that's a phrase that has guided me in terms of taking risks and also letting go of things and knowing when things don't serve me.
That's good. That's good. And for me, one way that I had to F it lately is that, sometimes the thing that keeps you from doing that thing that you really want to do, there's that little bit of fear or that little bit of imposter syndrome or whatever is going on, up here, which is why the therapy really helps to help you work through that stuff. But for me personally, it's been, if it's somebody I want to connect with, I say, F it. I'm going to go ahead and try, because the worst thing that can happen is they can say no. Or they
Ex-
can say, not now. But
exactly.
for me to not ask, or for me to not put myself out there, or, to position myself in certain ways and then wonder why things aren't happening, that's all on me. So F it, I'm going to do it anyway.
Exactly. It's a little phrase that gives you permission to just take that leap, you know?
Right,
And
right.
what happens happens. You live to tell it. You live to tell the story. That's all that matters.
Right, exactly, exactly. And because you are a food specialist, connoisseur, all of these wonderful things that you are in the world of food, I have to ask, also in the book, what are the things that you most enjoy eating and drinking?
Eating. There's so much I love to eat. I really love salads. I really
Oh,
love fresh fruit. I love mangoes. Um, I'm a I'm trained as a pastry chef, so I love desserts. I love cookies. But yeah, you will never upset me with like some delicious cookies, like a lot of beautiful fresh fruit or a huge salad. I love seafood. For drinking, I love bubbles. I love champagne. I love sparkling water. I love Recently I've been making this little cocktail of mezcal and mango juice,
okay.
lime juice. That's very delicious. But I always stand by bubbles. Any sparkling wine, champagne, I'm with it.
Okay, now I have to ask this question because several women in the book mentioned mezcal. I have no idea what that is.
Oh, so honestly, I feel like I should know more about it since I like it. But it's to me, it's almost like I think it's a derivative of agave, just like
Okay,
tequila,
okay,
but
okay.
it's got this smoky quality. So it's kind of, I don't know. I find it really, I like tequila too. And frankly, both tequila and mezcal, I can literally only have like, that's a Saturday night drink. It's not a, it's not a, I can't do it on the regular at all. But it's got this nice smoky quality that is just, it adds another like nuance that I think is more interesting than tequila and fun to make cocktails with.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Because when I saw it, I'm like, I don't really know what that is.
Yeah, like tequila's cousin, kind of.
Okay,
But
got it.
it's
Got it. Got it.
the same
Well,
thing.
thank you so much.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
so much. I appreciate you, Clancy. And like I said, I'm super excited about the book, the recipes, the beautiful. Oh yeah, there's Leah. We were talking about her. Leah
Yes, Leah Penniman.
Penniman.
She's amazing.
Yes, but, it's just so many beautiful, illustrations, the quotes, the recipes. This is just a wonderful, wonderful book, and I really encourage people to pick up a copy of it and read the stories. And as someone, well, the person was talking about their son in hospitality, had to hop off, but if you know someone who's interested in hospitality, I think it would be a good thing to share with them, male or female, because the stories are just powerful stories. It's information, it's inspiration, all of that to, allow someone to just learn more about the field of food and beverage. So thank you so much, Clancy. I'm excited about this book. And whenever you come out with another cookbook as well, I'll be on the lookout for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted that you liked cooking solo, and I'm so grateful you got for the culture. And thank you, thank you, thank you for talking with me about it. I appreciate it.
Oh yes, absolutely. So, well, everyone, actually, that's all I've got for today. So, there are some announcements coming up about the next couple of weeks, which I will be making probably tomorrow. So, be on the lookout for that. But for everyone who's watched live or will watch in the replay, we really do appreciate you. Please go and grab a copy of For the Culture. It'll be a good holiday gift. I'm just saying. For those who are interested in cooking and foodie, or of course you can buy it before, but it's definitely a good holiday gift that could actually go on the coffee table because it's just that beautiful. So thank you to everyone, and I look forward to seeing you again real soon. Clancy, don't hang up, but I'm gonna let
Okay.
everybody tell everybody else bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.